So a lot of you guys on Instagram wanted me to explain the controversial 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and how Max Verstappen got the first title. Well, you're in luck because last year I did make a video after that race exactly explaining the whole thing. So go check this one out and I'll meet you at the end of the video with some 2022 updates. Hey guys, what's up? I hope all of you are recovering from what was the craziest finale in the history of F1. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 2021 was absolutely bonkers and I still can't digest what happened in the last few laps of the race. First of all, a huge congratulations to Max Verstappen for winning the championship. That guy totally deserved it. I mean, he's driven like a beast the whole year. But at the same time, Lewis Hamilton was an absolute monster in the last 4 races. And he also had a fair chance to win his 8th World Championship. A lot of people are confused actually what happened in the last few laps of the race and why are they so controversial and why is Mercedes protesting against all of this. It's not that they're sore losers. There's actually been some bending of the rules. So I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's what I'm going to explain in this video. So let's start from the incident. What happened on the 53rd lap of the race was that Nicholas Latifi ended up crashing into a wall. And when you crash, there are two options. Either you yellow flag the race or red flag the race. When you red flag, when the damage is too much, you red flag and the race is paused for some time until everything is cleared and then everyone can race again. But when you yellow flag, there's this thing called safety car. And when a safety car is out, everyone has to be behind the safety car and no one can exceed a certain limit. You have to maintain a certain gap and you cannot overtake your competitors when the safety car is out. So that's exactly what happened on the 53rd lap of the race. Max Verstappen decided to pit in the 54th lap of the race for soft tires because he was on a used medium. And this is where a lot of people are wondering why did Lewis Hamilton not pit when Max Verstappen could. Now let me explain. What happens is that if Lewis Hamilton would have pitted, his position would have gone from P1 to P2 because the gap between Hamilton and Max was not that much, and if Hamilton would have pitted, Max would have easily overtaken and gotten position provided he did not pit. So because of that, Mercedes couldn't risk it because there was a chance that the race would have ended under the safety car, and once Max is P1 and Lewis is P2 and you cannot overtake, the race is over and Mercedes would have been the biggest fools if that would have happened and everyone would have trolled them. So obviously it was stupid to let go of the position, but at the same time there was a lot of gap between P2 and P3, so Max could actually go and pit and come out and still be P2. So because Red Bull had nothing to lose, they just pitted Max Verstappen and Mercedes couldn't do that. So I hope that's clear and no one's gonna ask again why Lewis Hamilton did not pit. So this happened on the 54th lap. And then on the 56th lap, the race director Michael Masi said that lapped cars cannot overtake. So what are lapped cars? So lapped cars are basically the cars which are behind, like 1 or 2 laps behind the leader, and because they are slow, a lot of times because you race in a circle more or less, these slower cars are overtaken by the leaders and then they become the lapped cars. So usually under a safety car, the rule is that let's say there's the guy that is first, there's a guy that is second, and in between there are a couple of back markers with 8, 9, 10 or 19, 20 position, something like that. They are allowed to go ahead, overtake the safety car and then rejoin in a perfect group so that first to 20 all the positions of the drivers are aligned perfectly. So this usually happens under a safety car. This can happen. This is what the rule says. So basically the rule says that any cars that have been lapped by the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap. And basically they are allowed to unlap themselves and the safety car will end at the ending of the next lap. Let's say on lap 10, if all of the lapped cars are allowed to overtake, then at the end of lap 11, the safety car will go in. So from lap 12, the racing will start. Now what Michael Masi, the race director, did is that on lap 56th, he said the lapped cars cannot overtake, which is okay. Either you allow all of the lapped cars to overtake or you don't allow anyone to overtake. So he didn't allow anyone to overtake. That was fine. But then suddenly on lap 57, he decides that only 5 cars between Max and Lewis were allowed to unlap themselves and rejoin. Now that's a little bit shady because in the history of F1, every time all the lapped cars are allowed to overtake or none of them are allowed to overtake. So what Michael Masi did was he cleared everything between Lewis and Max so that Max can be very close to Lewis, and then he ended the safety car on the same lap as well, which is once again very shady because according to the regulation, the safety car ends on the next lap. And then another thing that comes into picture is that he did not clear the back markers between Max and Carlos. So Carlos was P3 and there were 2 cars between 2 back markers between Max and Carlos, and he never cleared them, and which is why Carlos never got a fair chance to race Max. And he had Yuki and Bottas behind him, so his place was being compromised. He was under pressure from the P4 and P5, and he couldn't challenge Max because he had two back markers in between. So clearly the rules weren't followed, and only back markers between Lewis and Max were cleared. So all in all, it was quite unfair, because even if you go to 2020 in the Paris race, I think Michael Masi himself said that all the lapped cars have to first unlap themselves, and only then he can let go of the safety car. So he followed that rule in Paris. He did not follow that rule here, stating that race director has ultimately the control over the safety car, so he can do whatever he wants. That was the argument that FIA and Red Bull said, and that is actually quite annoying, because that gives race director too much power to manipulate races. I'm not saying that this guy had a bad intent. He was under a lot of pressure. We could hear the FIA radios. Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, everyone was jumping on Michael, and I think he just took a wrong decision, because this was nothing according to the rules, and it gave an unfair advantage to Max Verstappen because he was on fresh tires, Hamilton was on old tires. So all in all, this was quite shady, and this shouldn't have happened in the first place. What they could have done was not let any of the lapped cars overtake. Then that would have given a fair chance to Lewis and Max. And if he didn't allow the lap cars to overtake, they would have shown blue flags at the last lap. Max would have gone past, and if he would have overtaken Lewis and won the race, then that was on merit, that was perfect, and nobody would have complained about that. At the same time, if he would have red flagged the race on lap 53 and then allowed everyone to race again, Lewis would have been on fresh tires, Max would have been on fresh tires. It would have been fair again. But then you can argue that you can't red flag the race if the damage is not that much. But then everything, all of this mess that Michael did, he did because he wanted fair racing on the last lap. So on that note, he could have red flagged the race and we would have gotten fair racing for 5 laps. And once again, that would have been very fair. I don't think anyone had bad intent, but whatever happened did end up giving Red Bull slightly an unfair advantage. And you can't say that because I support Lewis Hamilton, I'm saying all of that, because all the drivers also said the same thing. Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, a lot of people were asked about this, and a lot of them said that the situations under which the race ended, they don't know, it's not right. So that basically sums up my whole opinion about this situation. If you're a Max fan, I'm just going to ask you one question. If the situations were reversed, if Max lost this way, the way Lewis lost, I'm pretty sure you guys must be protesting anything and everything right now, and Christian Horner and Helmut Marko would be out on the streets right now saying that FIA is biased and they will take up with a lawsuit. It's been a year since this whole fiasco has happened, and in March of 2022, FIA did put out a report which said there was a human error in the use of the safety car, but they cannot do anything about the results. Everything is gonna stay as it is, and that's about it. Everyone has accepted it and moved on. I think all of the fans should as well, because you're not gonna change that. So I hope the whole situation was explained well and you got to know what exactly happened in the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. I hope we don't have to see another finale end like this, because let's face it, it is quite toxic. It makes things very toxic. Nobody likes that as a genuine F1 fan. If you like the video, press the like button. If you didn't like it, press the dislike button twice. Suggest me more content for this channel. Let's make some epic content here. If you want to know the basics about F1, here's a video. It'll get you up to speed with everything that you need to know about Formula 1.